What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of The Other Guys on the Badlands Podcast Network. I'm Jake Chatsky, joined as always by Paul Kilgallen. Paul, the Jets are officially eliminated from playoff contention. We're coming to you guys on a Thursday because of some scheduling issues, but that game obviously was one that will linger and a disappointing one to watch for a while. How you doing? How you feeling?
Yeah, I'm pretty relieved that we got to record later in the week this week because of the scheduling issues. Because if we had to get up here Monday morning and just talk about that game mostly, like I don't really know what else we could have said at this point. Like it's a lot of the stuff that we've been saying pretty much all season. It all kind of came to a head at one time. It was, the defense appearing at least. I don't know, quit isn't the right word, but like the defense appearing to not have their best effort on that day, and the offense being completely inept, and the offensive line that we've been kind of bemoaning all season, like having its hands down worst game we've seen. And it was one of those games just from the opening series where you were like, all right, this is what we're getting today. Like as soon as the strip sack in the first quarter where Zach Wilson got murdered and there was no flag thrown, obviously, as is tradition. You knew that was what it was going to be all day. And, by the time it was all said and done, like I wasn't surprised that there were no points on the board, because generally when the tone is set early like that with the Jets, you kind of know what you're in for. It's almost like a lot of times in like a baseball game, you can make an analogy to, like, when you have a pitcher out there and you can just tell in the first inning, like, this is going to be a tough game today. He doesn't have it. The Jets are a lot like that. You can pretty much tell right away that they don't have it today. And it was obvious on Sunday, and man, it was hard to sit through. And I wish I could say that was a thing I'm not used to and it was hard, but like a lot of other things, it's an old, warm, comfortable sweatshirt, and I just put it on, sat through it, and let it ride.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Sunday started. I woke up, I'm out here on the West Coast. I wake up, I see news that Tyreek Hill is going to be inactive for the day. The Badlands group chat is popping off, and the boys are like throwing some money on the Jets to win outright. We're feeling good. The vibes are back. There's tweets about, all right, based on how the Thursday or whatever it was, the Saturday games went, the Jets have a 11% shot at the playoffs, which is, bigger than it was at the start of the week. And then you go out there and instantaneously it's like, all right, this game isn't worth watching. I almost prefaced this this intro with, at what point did you stop caring about the game? Because I had interest in some of the other games that were going on too, and like very early on, before the half had ended, I was like, the Jets are no longer a sound on the TV game. And I think the big, like, it was just a disaster. The season ended. It was just a microcosm for like how the season ended, where the quarterback was flat. You can't blame him because the offensive line was flat. The defense did as best they could initially and then just gave up. It was like the entire season happened in one game. Quarterback
Yep.
injury. And so the biggest thing that I wanted to talk about coming onto this show today was the major bone I had to pick with you, because we ended last week's episode where I was firmly in the tank camp. I had given up hope on the season. I was rooting for losses. And over the course of the episode and by the end, and, obviously the Tyreek injury factoring into that, you pulled me out of the darkness that I was so comfortable being in and convinced me to root for this team earnestly until they were mathematically eliminated. So I went into that game last week positively rooting for the Jets, with money, a little bit of money on the Jets, actively hoping against what I know logically is the goodwill of this team and getting a better draft pick. And without you, I would have been so fine on my Sunday last week watching a 30-0 game, just being like, well, it's what I wanted anyway. It's good for the team. I don't have to watch the whole game and like see a close one. I can just sort of check out of this. Instead, I was just miserable for the whole experience. So I just wanted to personally thank you for that and ask if this experience of watching the Jets be mathematically eliminated has changed your views on how you should root for tanking in the future.
You're welcome, first of all, for allowing you to feel something last week, and getting you out of your dark hole. I'd like to borrow the words of an MMA guy that I don't actually like very much. I'd like to apologize to absolutely nobody, because I just can't ever get on the tank thing. Even in like in certain scenarios, I can at least logically accept why a tank is the right thing, right? Like the Trevor Lawrence year, there was a clear number one. I didn't like it then, but at least like I could understand. With this year, like to be on the edge of playoff contention and to bail early, it feels dirty to me, and I'll never be able to get with it. So like, and I know we're probably going to talk about this more because now we're out, right? Like now I can't even stand on we still have a shot, however unlikely it is. Maybe Aaron Rodgers is coming back. Like maybe we can get hot at the right time. It's all gone. Like all of it's gone now. And so we're probably going to have this conversation a little bit more because I'm still going to have a hard time with it. But man, like I said last week, you only get 17 of these opportunities a year, and I just can't sit there and check out and root for a loss. I hate it. But yeah,
So
like I said, you're welcome for helping you feel something.
So the part of the argument that I give you is like if the Jets were a team like they are this year, I should say. If the Jets this year were in position where like no one rooting for this team in their right mind would actually think that this team as constructed is a Super Bowl contender. The idea was always that we needed an Aaron Rodgers level person at quarterback to get there. So the second that he went down, that dream went out the window. If I were up here saying it's the Jets shouldn't even try to make a wild card spot because they're never going to win the Super Bowl, and having the 16th pick is better than having the 20th. You should stand up and walk out of this set and tell me to fuck off right now, because like making the playoffs is a goal, and like I totally agree with you that like the the draft is a crapshoot. There's no way of knowing whether the 10th pick is going to be better than the 15th, is going to be better than the 20th. But so if you have a shot at the playoffs, again, keep going. But there was a point this season where like the playoffs no longer became a reasonable expectation. We needed a million things to go right, and we needed the Jets to win games, and neither of those was really a realistic option. And so at that point, the counter to your argument that we had last week about, whether the fifth pick is really that much better than this, someone pointed out it's all currency. So like, even if we're the third pick and we're comfortable with either of the two tackles that are still on the board, that gives us the option to trade back to fourth. And whether we're right or not, like it's a lottery. Getting as many shots possible is the goal. And so unless, you have premium shots like the number one selection. And so if we're in a position where losing games will help us be more flexible and accumulate more capital, that's just like where I naturally as a fan tend to root once the playoffs are no longer a realistic option. So that's just my angle on the
No,
tanking side of things.
and you're right, and I think it comes down to almost like I don't want to say it's a personality difference, right? But like to me, being a fan is irrational. Like just the fact that we put so much emotional energy into watching at this point in my life, mostly people who are younger than me go out and play the sport and like it's all irrational, right? And so approaching it from where you're approaching it from is a very logical, straightforward, like business like approach to being a fan. Like you're right when you put it in the terms of it's currency and you want as much currency as possible going into the next phase of the build and the development and all that stuff, that is a very smart business approach. It's just like, it's not how I operate as a fan, right? Like I'm a gamble guy. Like I want to take the currency, I want to throw it at something, and I want to go for the big win. And so the one thing that I can like look back on now that like the dust has settled, we're out, it's over, is like, and we talked about it a little bit last week, is the whole concept of being a quarterback away was like slowly smashed over the course of the season. Like we could say it was all gone week one, but it wasn't, right? Because we were in the playoff, we were in the hunt graphic until last week, right? So like it wasn't really all gone. It was still kind of there, but over the course of the season, there was this very slow burn that kind of eroded that whole thought. Like we're not just a quarterback away. And I think you heard Aaron Rodgers kind of talk about that. You heard CJ Mosley talk about that in a press conference this week, where he basically said, like, if you're relying on one player, like you're never going to get there, right? If you're relying on one guy to come save you, it's never going to happen. And so I think as that kind of picture faded out of everybody's thought, right, that it's not just one player, we're not just one guy away, that's where I can look back and be like, yeah, nothing was really ever happening this season. Even if Aaron Rodgers came back, it wasn't happening, because look at this offensive line. Joe Douglas has been building it for 5 years and it still sucks. You could argue that it's worse than it was before. And none of the moves he's made have been right. Like the Becton pick over Wirfs, that is probably worse than the Zach Wilson pick. And I know that's like a little bit hyperbole, because a franchise quarterback pick is always probably going to be weighed a little bit more heavily. But like a franchise left tackle pick is pretty big too. And he whiffed. He completely whiffed. And at the time, I think most people would have said take Wirfs over Becton. Like there was that video of Wirfs jumping out of a pool, like just jumping up onto the side out of a pool. And like the whole argument with Becton was like this freak upside, but like Wirfs was a freak too, and he's stable, and like he already won a Super Bowl. Like there's just so much there. And so, I think we should have realized earlier that like the reinforcements were not coming for this offensive line, and the team was not going anywhere regardless of who was playing quarterback, and there really was never hope. And like one other thing, a couple other things I want to get off my chest, like, does Roger Saffold, does he really exist? Because I haven't seen a picture of him in a Jet uniform yet. Like he got signed a month and a half ago, and like is he just an idea, or is he a real person? Because I've not seen him at practice. He hasn't been activated for a game. Like who is this guy? Where is he? It's ridiculous. I don't understand how someone could whiff so tremendously on every single offensive line move that they've made in 5 years. And we're talking not only Becton and Laken Tomlinson and the Saffold thing that never materialized, which was just a depth piece anyway, but like Ryan Khalil, all the bottom level guys, the later round guys. He never took that kid that went to the Chiefs that we've talked about a couple times on offensive line. It's just a remarkable level of whiffing on every single approach spanning 5 years. And one more thing on the tanking before we move on to the next subject, like Solomon Thomas had a press conference yesterday, and he was basically like, they were asking him how do you stay motivated and all that stuff. And his whole thing was, guys are playing for and this is not revolutionary information here, but like guys are playing for contracts, guys are trying to come back from injury, guys are trying to stay alive in the NFL. They might not have a job next year at all. Like there's all these reasons players play, and players don't tank, front offices and coaching staffs do. And, you could argue that trotting Simeon out there might constitute an effort to lose. We'll see what happens at the quarterback and at a few other positions, but the defense certainly has most of their talent out there, and I don't see them laying down for, one of the worst teams in the NFL. So we'll see what happens, man. I'll be hard pressed to sit there on Sunday on Christmas Eve trying to be happy and just accepting a loss. Like, I don't know.
Well, we'll get into that in a little bit when we talk some draft stuff. But before we do, it wouldn't be a Jets podcast without talking about QB1, Aaron Rodgers. He went on the Pat McAfee show, as he does all the time, and he said some things, as he does all the time. For me, the most important thing that he said was that he does not expect next year to be his last with the Jets. he always wanted to give the Jets 2 years, and he didn't feel that this counted as one. Which, like, if Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers and he's healthy for a majority of the season and playoffs, like, that is should be music to everyone's ears. And, like, no matter what draft pick we had, like, that would always be the best option. So I thought that was, and that obviously is going to carry over into draft strategy and things we talk about in a little bit. But Paul, you listened to it. What were the things you took away from Aaron Rodgers this time around?
Yeah. So first of all, it's been, and I wrote this in the feed. It's been nice having him every Tuesday, especially after losses, to kind of like wipe away the nonsense and replace it with like some positive talk. Because for as much as I thought Aaron Rodgers was kind of a dick when he was in Green Bay, because from a distance, when he's not on your team, you kind of look at things a different way. And then obviously, as soon as he comes to the Jets, I start making excuses for everything. And that's my guy and I'm going to defend him. Right. And like, I've really come around to kind of some of the ways Rodgers looks at things. And it's been nice, and especially nice after this weekend, after as ugly and as painful as that was, and the season ending, and, the clip that's floating around of Mike McDaniel, like basically calling the touchdown to Waddle, saying like, I feel a one play drive coming here. And then they throw deep to Waddle for a one play drive touchdown. Like, after all that nonsense on Sunday, it was nice to like get a little bit of like future looking rah shit, for lack of a better word, from Rodgers. Right. And yeah, I think the main thing everybody wanted to hear was that it's not over next year, that we might have a few more cracks at this thing. And obviously it gets less and less likely every year with his age. But he said, 2 years, and then Saleh in his press conference today said he could see him playing 4 or 5, but ideally we just win next year and we can call it a success. The other things that he said were just that, he kind of believes in Hackett, Saleh, and Joe D, which I'm not sure everybody wanted to hear. I didn't walk away from it convinced that that means all 3 of them are coming back. Like, there was a little bit of like a weird like body language thing going on where his like eyes were kind of darting around a little bit, which I'm probably reading into it too much. But he said the right words. He said everything he was supposed to say. And he also hit us with like some like, I don't know if inspirational is the right word, but some of that, like, it's darkest before the dawn, like, we're coming back. That won't be the lasting image of me in a Jet jersey, like all that stuff to like kind of make you feel like, all right, it's a lost season, but we can get close to capturing what we all felt like on September 10th of this year. We can get close to capturing that again in the off season, and hopefully go into next year like adding a few pieces and feeling like we're in a pretty good spot again. And he was like pretty blunt about the fact that like we are not there on offense. We do need to add some pieces. He also kind of implied that like some people need to go. He didn't really say those words, but there was heavily implication of like, we need to make sure we have the right people here, and we need to kind of cut off some of the dead wood and things like that. And at one point he went down the line naming, like, it felt like he named every player on the team, and it was mostly defensive guys. And the context of the conversation was like, there's a lot of good stuff you can build around here. And there were a few names he didn't toss out there, right? Like, the only 2 names on offense were Brees and Garrett, obviously. And like, didn't say anything about Lazard, didn't say anything about Zach Wilson, didn't say anything about Mekhi Becton or anybody else on the line, right? And so potentially I'm reading into it too much again, but I thought it was pretty stark that he didn't mention those names. And so there was a lot of stuff you could take from the things he did say, but there was a lot of stuff you could take from the things he didn't say also. And I think, he's in a position where he kind of now is not only looking at the team from the outside before he joined the Jets and saying, this is a team I want to join, but now he's also seen it from the inside for a year, and he's experienced some of the things that we've been experiencing for 20, 30, 40 years. that like just like that Jets ick that seems to stick around here, and some of the players that might not be the right fit and different things like that. And so he can approach the recruiting effort and kind of partnering with the front office in the offseason, good, bad, or indifferent, right? That may not be a great thing that you have a quarterback who's participating in all that activity, but good, bad, or indifferent, it's happening. And I think it's better that it happens with him having now been here for a year and kind of understanding some of the dynamics at play. And so, like, all in all, walked away from it a little bit like renewed and like kind of being able to exhale. Number one, that like the season's over. We don't have to like stress about this thing anymore. We don't have to worry about him coming back and playing in meaningless games and possibly, and it wasn't just like the re-rupturing of the Achilles I was nervous about. Like, what if he blows up a knee? What if something else gets hurt? What if he tears a shoulder? Like, it wasn't just the Achilles that we had to be worried about when he came back, right? Playing in these meaningless games. So we can kind of put all that to bed and just kind of move forward now and look towards the offseason, which, again, I've said it a million times, it's a comfortable old sweater for us. We always win every offseason, so we'll stay undefeated there, and we can go attack now.
So before we get into the offseason, I want to talk about one more thing, and then we'll move on to some draft stuff and some fun hypotheticals. But you and I are sickos, and we will be watching Jets games. I assume a lot of the people who listen to these podcasts, especially now, are also sickos who will be watching Jets games. So I wanted to know, like, what are you looking for in the games when you're watching them throughout the rest of the season? Give the people some things to be rooting for as they watch these games with us.
Yeah, I'm just looking for stuff that can make me feel okay about next season, right? I think we've seen a lot of people on the offense look listless. So, like, I'd like to see, Breece Hall break off a big run. Just to, like I know he's good. I know he's still good, but I just want to see it. Like, I just want to see it one or two more times before the year's out so I can go into the offseason being like, we're getting Breece 2 years off an ACL next year, and it's going to be even better, and we're going to see that bounce that running backs get after the second year after an ACL surgery. And so, like, I want to see that. I want to see Garrett obviously continue to produce and put up, like, he's putting up franchise record numbers for first 2 years as a wide receiver with the Jets, which is great. But the thing that makes those numbers exponentially more meaningful is the situation that he's done it in, right? With 2 different offensive coordinators, 100 different quarterbacks, complete turmoil, historic offensive ineptitude. Like, to the fact that all of that can still happen in that tornado of shit makes it extra special. So, like, I just want to see things from the young players that make me feel comfortable about less retooling needing to happen. And it's easy to say Garrett and it's easy to say Breece, but like, I'd like to see something from Lazard too. I know that's a 4-year contract. Saleh had a little bit of a Freudian slip in a press conference a few weeks ago where he said that we have Lazard at least through the end of next year, which is like there's an out after 2 years, and it sounds like they're already out. So, like, the fact that he's going to be here next year, like, show me something. Show me some blocking ability. Show me making a tough catch over the middle. Just show me something to make me feel okay. Ruckert, Gibson, continued, development from the defensive guys, maybe Tony Adams. Like, let me see a little bit more of, I don't even want to say Zaire Barnes because we haven't seen him at all. But like Sherwood, let me see a little bit more Sherwood. Just give me something to feel good about. And as far as we have in the notes here, like, that we need a loss to Washington, and I've kind of made my feelings clear on that already. But I will say that if, like, this coaching staff coaches so conservatively, especially on offense, and they're just such wimps when it comes to like going forward on fourth. And we've seen a couple fake punts and things like that the last couple of weeks. But like, if like tanking to this coaching staff translates to like being a little wild and going forward on fourth down and like doing wacky stuff like that and being uber aggressive because it's like, well, fuck it, we're not in the playoffs, let's try. I would love to watch that. And I'll take a loss if you're going to go for it on your own, 40-yard line or so on 4th and 3. Like, show me that. right? Like, let me see what it looks like when you play aggressive, when you coach a team like Dan Campbell coaches a team, or Sirianni, or a handful of the other like uber aggressive coaches out there. Like, show me what that looks like when you don't have the threat of the playoffs hanging over you and you feel like you need to be conservative all the time. Like, show me that. I want to see that.
Yeah, so the number one thing, I mean, a lot of overlap between what I'm looking for and what you're looking for. I think the number one thing I'm rooting for is for Garrett to get over 1,000 yards. I think, like you said, the situation he's in, like that would just be so meaningful, and also just like so wildly impressive. And I also want to point out like just how good Garrett is. He went 2 picks after Drake London, who is arguably in a similar situation, like shitty quarterback, shitty offense, and the numbers that Garrett has put up over 2 years are just like, if both of them were in elite offenses, Garrett would be up there with the best wide receivers in the league statistically. So hopefully we get him a full season of competent quarterback play and the other things to go around with it. But while we can, let's get him over 1,000 yards. I put lose to Washington in the notes because I already said I'm rooting for tanking, and draft position wise, this is a critical game. And you sent me earlier this week a hypothetical draft scenario that we wanted to talk about on the pod. So, uh, as I get into why losing to Washington is so critically important, why don't you talk about this draft scenario and we'll share our thoughts about what we'll do?
Yeah. So one of the hundreds of Jets Twitter accounts out there posted this, which is basically it's a first 6 picks screenshot, right? And it's Chicago first taking Caleb Williams, New England taking Drake May, Arizona taking Marvin Harrison Jr., Washington taking Joe Alt, and then Chicago taking Olaf Shanu, which leaves us at 6 with arguably the top 5 people that we would, in theory, pick gone. And I texted it to you and I just said, "What are you doing here?" And my answer before you answered was, I'm taking Malik Neighbors and I'm happy about it and I'm laughing, right? And then secondary to that is every single remaining draft pick I have and every single remaining dollar I have is going to the offensive line because we missed on those first 2. I don't think it's worth trying to reach for somebody there. Another qualification in this tweet was assume trading back isn't an option, right? So like obviously you would say maybe trade down, do whatever, but like in this scenario, trading back wasn't an option. And I think I'm taking Malik Neighbors and I'm laughing and I'm happy about it, right? Because you look at what happened in the game the other night, the end of the Seattle Philly game, and Jackson Smith and Jigba made that catch, and it's a catch we saw him make in college a bunch of times. He made it in the rain to win the game from Drew Lock. And last year we took Will McDonald, who may end up being a very good player, but we took Will McDonald at a position that wasn't a position of need, and we took him 8 picks before JSN went. And so, like, if you have the option to upgrade the receiver position with an LSU wide receivers who have done pretty well in the NFL lately, like, I'm taking it and I'm running, and don't try to stop me. And like I said, I'm donating every other single resource we have to fixing the OL because you can't overlook it. Obviously, my preferred pick at whatever slot we get is Joe Alt. That's who I want. And if Joe Alt and Neighbors are both there, I'm going to take Joe Alt. But if that's the situation, I'm taking Malik Neighbors, who is, by the way, number 4 on Connor Rodgers' big board.
So, if this situation happens, the first you said, "What are you doing?" The first thing I'm doing is going back to our archives and clipping the episode where you were so happy about beating the Texans. And I was like, this is a fucking nightmare, and showing you exactly why I thought it was a nightmare. And this, to me, is why this game against Washington is absolutely critical and a must watch for Jets fans. We need to lose this game and guarantee we get one of those top 5 picks. Because even if you want to argue that there's a receiver who's more important than an offensive lineman, which for this Jets team, I do not think is the case, the only guy that could maybe convince me of that is Marvin Harrison Jr. And I get that Neighbors is good and is high on Connor's big board, and I trust Connor's opinion way more than my own on college athletes. But to me, watching this team, like the O line is in shambles. And I think this is a very similar Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell conversation where it's like you can either have an O line and throw to anyone or not have an O line and barely get the ball to Chase. And like, granted, the Bengals were able to figure it out by pouring a ton of other resources into the offensive line, like you said. But I would much rather be using these swings to build the wall, and having a top five pick will give us the ability to do that. So in this scenario, obviously you want to trade down. If not, I do think whether it's Neighbors or Rome Odunze from Washington, like a receiver would probably be the target over someone like a Brock Bowers. But I'm just praying to God that this is not the case and we're able to draft an offensive lineman in the first round and don't get swooped again on draft night with all the offensive linemen coming off the board one pick before the Jets. Please don't let that happen.
First of all, I'm always in for it taking offensive line, so I love it. Right? Like if we get an offensive lineman in the top 5, 6 picks, whatever it is, fine. Remind me, who did we pick when Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase were both on the board? Who did we pick? Zach Wilson, right? We picked a quarterback. All right, so let's just not do that again, right? Like, thank God you didn't say Jaden Daniels, right? Because there's so many needs. Like, let's just please not do that again, because we should have taken Penei Sewell or Jamar Chase. We didn't. So let's just not make that same mistake again.
Yeah, I mean, I think quarterback would really only be in the discussion if we had a top 2 pick this year, and I don't think that's the case. So I don't think you have anything to worry about. But I
A lot
wanted,
of people in that Twitter comment section saying Jaden Daniels, though. A
yeah,
lot of
well,
people.
he did win a Heisman. I don't know if you heard that, but someone had to get Neighbors the ball, you know. Anyways, last thing before we wrap, little draft hypothetical, and it's a little bit of a draft hypothetical with a this season spin on it. So there's been a lot of rumors in the news that this will be Bill Belichick's last season. The Patriots right now are projected to finish with a top 2 overall pick. The New York Jets have not beaten Bill Belichick and the Patriots since, correct me if I'm wrong on this, 2015. It's been almost 8 years. Um, and we play the Patriots on the last week of the season. So this is a hypothetical, but it's also a very real scenario that's likely to happen. If the Jets find themselves in a scenario where option A is you beat the Patriots and guarantee that they get a top 2 pick likely to be used on a quarterback, and that could end up tormenting our franchise for the next decade. Or but you ended Bill Belichick's career with a loss to the Jets. That will forever be his last game as a Patriot. Or Belichick wins. He ends his career on a 8-year streak of always beating the Jets, but he plays himself out of a quarterback. And let's say, just to make this, I guess, a little painful for you, they're picking third and they take Joe Alt. So they end up with the lineman that you want.
Okay.
But they win. The Jets have lost. We're able to either if they take Joe Alt, it means the Jets end up with like either Marvin Harrison Jr. or Fashanu, or they don't take Joe Alt. They take one of they're going to take one of those three. The Jets are going to end up with one of those three for all intents and purposes. So those are the two scenarios. And beating Bill Belichick, but handing the Patriots a quarterback, or the Patriots don't end up with a quarterback, but Belichick has this 8-year span of ending his career dominating the Jets and ends his miserable season beating us one last time. What are you taking?
What do you think I'm going to say?
You're going to take beating the Patriots.
Of course. Hell yeah, I'm going to take beating the Patriots. I think if you think Belichick is a good coach, which it would be hard to say anything else. I joke because I have some Patriots fans like in my family. My sister married a Patriots fan, and I have a few others swirling around that like I like to joke around with them that Belichick sucks and he's nothing without Brady. But like, let's get real. He's a great coach. He's one of the best coaches ever. Is he under 500 without Brady? He is. Did he suck in Cleveland? Not really. He had Cleveland moving in the right direction before all the mess went down there, and he left and came to the Jets and did everything he did, and then left us at the altar and went up to New England. And has he been under 500 since Brady left? Yes, all of those things are true. He's also a really good coach. He's probably struggled a little bit in player personnel, but if you think he's a good coach, right, which it's hard to argue, then we shouldn't be scared about them getting a quarterback after he leaves, right? Because in theory, the boogeyman's gone at that point, right? So like, in theory, on paper, we should be worried less about what happens if they get Caleb Williams or Drake May, because everything that has tormented us for 20 years is now gone. Like Brady, the quarterback that we are basically responsible for getting into the starting lineup originally, is gone. Belichick, the guy who left us at the altar and then went up there and killed us for 20 years, will be gone. Like it's all gone. So unless you think that a pairing of Caleb Williams and Drake May plus Gerard Mayo, who is potentially their coach in waiting, is going to inflict the same pain on us for the next 20 years, which I'm not sure I can say I believe, I want to walk away with a win. Like I want to end it. Like I have countless memories of him just fucking with us. Like, do you remember the Darnold Gase game with like the punt? Do you remember the punt thing where he was just getting false start flags and delay of game flags, and he's on the sideline laughing, just laughing at us, right? And there's 100 examples of that where he goes out of his way to take an extra step to fuck us because he hates us. And whatever the hate is because of, if it's because of Woody Johnson and when he took over for Leon Hess, like whatever it goes back to, the guy hates us. I want him to end his career with a bad taste in his mouth. That's worth it to me, whatever comes next, because whatever comes next is an unknown, and I'll take it and I'll deal with it later. I want to finish it out on a good note, and I want to send him home, or whatever, to wherever his next job is. Like, go try and see if you can turn it around in Carolina. Go see if you can fix the Chargers. Do whatever you're going to do next, but just get out of my face and get out of here with a loss, and I'll take the chips wherever they fall. Fuck Bill Belichick.
It's a fair take. Fair. Fuck Bill Belichick is a very fair take. I think, the scary thing is that they get a top 2 pick and then he doesn't get fired, and then you've got Belichick and a quarterback. But I do think especially if I know all the rumors are Gerard Mayo, the other factor I have is like, does a top 2 pick make the Patriots job more enticing? And do they go with a different hire that's not Gerard Mayo? Like, do they get a Harbaugh to come to New England? And like, because I don't think he's doing that to coach Mac Jones, but he might be doing that
Right.
to coach Drake May or Caleb Williams. So I don't know.
Harbaugh's an interesting one. I think Tomlin would scare me more than Harbaugh if they were able to somehow swindle the Steelers into, use whatever Patriots black magic they have to get Tomlin away from Pittsburgh and bring him up there. I think that would scare me the most of all the potential options out there. But yeah, I mean, your point's fair. Like the next boogeyman could come.
Yeah. But and I think quarterback is supreme. Like, if one of these two is the guy, and I know the draft is a crapshoot, but if one of these two is the guy, like I will take one more in a slew of Belichick losses. Like, us beating him his last game is not going to change, in my mind, the relationship Bill Belichick has with the Jets. Would it be nice to finally win one? Sure. But like, if we lose, it's not going to be like, and he beat you in their last game. It's not like that much of a cherry on top of what he's already accomplished. So
you're right. It means more to us than it does to him, right? It's for him, it's just another win. For us, it's
100%. It would mean more to us than to him. But in my opinion, the final win against Belichick means less to me than them not terrorizing us. And like, they're not going to be able to terrorize us with Mac Jones. So keeping them away from an answer at quarterback for as long as possible is what my logic side of the brain is telling me. Now, am I going to be fucking rooting for Bill Belichick to like rally it up on us? No, absolutely fucking not. But in all likelihood, I will watch the game, and if we beat Bill Belichick, I will be happy about that. And if we lose, I'll be like, haha, you can't get a quarterback. I'll have a positive outlook on it no matter what, because I can't fucking stand that guy. But yeah, man, that's it.
Well, that's our best attribute as Jets fans is being able to take a horrible situation and just tweaking it a little bit to just make it sound positive for us.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, our listeners will have to let us know what they'd want us to do in the Belichick hypothetical I just laid out. We'll see if more people are on my team or on your team. I have a feeling more people will be rooting for us to beat Belichick like you, just because it's tough to openly admit you aren't rooting for that to happen. But like, if we set up the poll of like beat Belichick's last game versus Patriots get another franchise quarterback, which is how I'm equating it in my mind, like I think more people would pick the side of Patriots.
Well, one final thought on that, and I know you're trying to wrap up. One final thought on that is like, how many of these have we sat through? Whether it was Carson Wentz versus Jared Goff, or Jameis Winston versus Marcus Mariota, or Sam Darnold versus Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, like all the quarterbacks that came out that year, or Zach Wilson versus Trevor. Like, by and large, they all don't work out, right? So like, I know we as Jet fans have this kind of like abused dog thing going on where we're like constantly terrified of like the Patriots are going to get the next big thing. Like they're the boogeyman, dude. Like they do everything right. We do everything wrong. And it's been that way for a long time. But I think there's starting to be some evidence building up where they're doing a lot of things wrong. If you look at his draft record, it's been bad. Like he took N'Keal Harry over like a lot of good wide receivers that year. And like, so like, I don't know. I guess I just lean toward, by and large, a lot of these like which quarterback is going to be the guy conversations. If you look back on them 5 to 7 years later, like a lot of times they were all very silly conversations.
Yeah.
And so
hopefully
we'll see, right? Time will tell.
Hopefully that's the case. And hopefully the Patriots are stuck in this cycle of hell for another 30 years. That wraps us up. Thank you guys so much for listening. Leave a comment on the Discord or on the Patreon if you guys have any comments for us or any thoughts about our hypotheticals. Can't speak as we're ending the episode. If you guys haven't already, please upgrade to the War Room tier on Patreon so you can get all the awesome things the entire Badlands crew is putting out for you. We'll see you guys next week after the Jets hopefully lose to Washington. Any thoughts on that, Paul?
No, I say, I'll be rooting for a win, however illogical that is. And I hope everyone enjoys some family time with the holiday coming up this weekend, and we'll talk to you on the other side of it.
Yeah. Happy holidays, everybody. Peace.